Well, hello, friends and neighbors. John, your whiskey neighbor here again. Welcome to my deck. Today I'm going to continue the series that I started, I think, last week or the week before, looking at differently finished or unique whiskeys. Today we're going to take a look at a release from Basil Hayden. I'll tell you more about it when we get back, but certainly qualifies as something different than usual. We got some rye, we got some port. What is this? This is Basil Hayden's Dark Rye.
3, 4.
Thanks for staying with me. As I said in the intro, this is a look at unique whiskeys, different whiskeys that I have on my shelf, and today we're going to talk about Basil Hayden's Dark Rye. Basil Hayden's Dark Rye is an interesting and different whiskey. It's got Kentucky straight rye. It's got rye from Alberta distillers up here in Canada, Alberta, close to where I am. And then it has a splash of California port added. So 2 different ryes and then actual addition of port. Maybe I thought I looked it up and now I can't recall how much or the ratios of each. But at any rate, it's released only at 40%, which is pretty common for Basil Hayden. They tend to release their bourbons. It's a Jim Beam product, but more around that 40%. I assume it's natural color because some fresh rye is going to have some good color, and then you add some port, and you can get this really dark ruby red. I think quite easily. So I would assume that there's no color in here. Let's get at this strange whiskey, see what it tells us. The nose is not as spicy as you might think, carrying a label like rye. Instead, it really is fairly influenced by wine. There's fruit, there's dark fruit. And, maybe a little bit of peppers in there, but it's sweet. So some little bit of vanillas. Really not a complicated nose. Interesting, but not like I shouldn't even say interesting. Fairly tight. It's not it's not overpowering. It's not going to put you off, but it really doesn't speak a lot to what's coming next. Let's see what that is. Cheers. Sorry to give it away like that before taking a sip. I mean, clearly I've had a few sips from this bottle. That palate is, juicy berry up front, plum. It can get into an edge of almost cherry cough syrup, but it really plays in full dark fruits, juicy fruits, so much fruits. Better take another sip. It really thinks it drinks like a port. It just does, or like a strong, fortified, heavy, thick wine. The end of the palate, you kind of keep it in your mouth, or the early finish is when I can finally get a little bit of rye notes. And for me, rye notes are a little bit of pepper start to come out and say, okay, there's some spicing here. Really struggling to get any kind of herbal quality because that can come along with rye. I do get a little bit of drying nature on the end, and a little bit more, like there's some oak. But the palate is overwhelmingly port influenced or wine influenced. So Oh, and there the nose, after I've had it a few times. It took a while to come up. Now it's a little bit breezy out here on the deck. I had to close the windows, try to keep out the wind. So maybe it just needed to build up a little bit more up here. Now I can get just a little more caramels, a little more pepper, a little bit more oak even in the nose. So it took a little while to get going. Nose isn't that bad. But that palate is wild. It definitely qualifies as unique for me. And there's times when I poured a little sip, it kind of coats a little bit in the mouth, and I'm like, okay, this is kind of neat. It's like drinking a really heavy fortified wine, and that can be a neat experience, or like a cocktail. Like it really kind of drinks like a cocktail. It's pleasing. It doesn't burn you out one way or another. It doesn't really hug you like with a really powerful rye hug, and it's got a lot of dark, deep port flavors in it. So, from that point of view, it could be really good if you're looking for kind of almost edge of cocktail, but you don't want to mix it. You just want to pour it out. Like you see them now on the shelf. People are releasing old fashions or whatever in a bottle. In that way, it would fit that bill. If you're really thinking rye, oh, I'd really like a rye, I'd like something, a little scratchy, a little peppery, but some good heart to it. I think you'll be disappointed. You'll be let down by this bottle. At least I am. So it really doesn't get anywhere off, 3, maybe 3.5. But for me, it's a lot closer to down around the 3. I got it for a great steal, so I don't mind having it. But it just doesn't stand up for what I'm looking for when I go for a rye. I did pour a little bit of Legent because that was, I think, where I started the series with Legent. Legent is really all bourbon, but it's finished in ex-California wine and ex-sherry, a portion of it. Now, it's released at 47 versus 40, but I just thought, got to compare it with something. Especially coming after this, it's bourbon. It's a bourbon nose. We've got a little bit of buttery note, some sweetness, some caramel. And actually in this sitting, a little more spice than I was getting out of the one that's supposed to be a rye. Give it a taste. And in this sitting, it's a bourbon. I mean, I shouldn't really shoot a bourbon against a rye, but it's got the essential nature of the spirit that you're looking for. Whereas this one, you can't get away. You can't get away from thinking this is a strong, rich port. I don't know about you. I said it that way. I can't get away. So in this sitting, the Legent really holds up well. The fruit becomes an accent. The finish becomes what it is, a finish. Whereas Basil Hayden's Dark Rye is the feature, the thing that you absolutely notice, and you might like it. It even gives a little bit of chocolate with the fruit, but you just can't, it is what's holding up. There's rye in there, but what's being held up is the port they chose to add. Hope that makes sense. And thanks for joining me here. It is still the weekend, and I'm hoping I might be able to catch a moment and shoot a few more of these. You guys have a great weekend.